On the agenda tonight, we're going to be taking a look at the Celtic Thunder production of The Sound of Silence. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So this is another one of those investigation type videos where we're looking out for auto-tune, pitch correction and all that kind of stuff. Now, this comes from the Celtic Thunder YouTube channel and I had a little look into that and they tour, put on big productions, and this is a performance from that. It is labelled as Mythology dash The Sound of Silence, so I'm not sure what Mythology refers to. Maybe it's just the two guys that we're going to be watching performing, but let's jump into it. As always, there's a link in the description below if you guys want to watch it the whole way through without me interrupting it and without the isolated vocals and everything that we jump into here with the vocal pitch monitor as well. But I'll let it all play as the original mix was from the video and we'll see what we can see.
Hello darkness, my old friend, I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that is planted in my brain still remains within the sounds of silence. In restless streams I walked alone through narrow streets of cobblestone.
So, I mean, when I first watched this video, you can tell straight away that there's at least some really heavy pitch correction going on, if not auto-tune, just applied to the lead vocal, because when we look at the vocal pitch monitor, you can start to see straight away that we have these lines that are just, directly over 440 hertz tuning, and that doesn't happen with great singers. They have expression in their voice, so they're not always on lines. But I mean, literally everything here is getting snapped.
I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping.
You start to get more of an appreciation of that mechanical process sound, and that's all that's happening here, is that a computer processor is adjusting the notes in order to get them directly over these lines. So it could be a really quick video for tonight because we've established that it has been either pitch corrected or auto-tuned. I mean, it is borderline auto-tune, the fact that when we just have a scroll through, no matter where we go to, you'll see the notes being snapped to lines. And the other interesting thing to point out is that the isolation software that I'm using is now becoming a bit more advanced because it is based on AI learning, artificial intelligence. A computer is learning to hear a voice, as it did to begin with. That's what it was programmed to do. But now it's learning to distinguish between two voices. So this is why, even though this performance is two voices, I mean, it's not perfect yet, but I've been able to isolate the lead vocal and the harmony vocal so that we can see the lead vocal here. Every little section where it's picking up this lead vocal is going to be directly over the lines. And we have never, ever had that on the channel with any analysis video, regardless of the kind of caliber of singer we're looking at. They never do this. They never hit these lines dead on for 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes for the whole song and never deviate from those held notes being on the line. So therefore we know that this has been manipulated. I just want to jump into this in a little bit more detail because this comes from the Celtic Thunder YouTube channel and they tour, they go around, they put on big productions and they perform live. But this video hasn't been labelled as live, and I think a lot of people might assume that it is. But, I mean, at least they're being honest about that. They're not trying to pretend that what we're hearing in this video was how the performance was on the night. The other interesting thing is that the two guys here are pretending to play guitar. but not the chord shapes. They're pretending to do the strumming with the right hand, but you can see clearly that they're missing the strings. And even when we get close up with the guitar, you can see that there's no string vibrations going on, and you would normally see a little bit of movement in the strings. So I'm wondering why they've been told not to hit the strings for this performance, unless it is a fully mimed performance, or they were going to apply auto-tune and pitch correction after the fact, come what may, and they didn't want the strings to be picked up on the microphones, so then the auto-tune would start being applied to the guitar and it would blend into one, and therefore the vocal wouldn't work. So it might have been that, but there are other things in this that when the strings come in, I feel like in the mix you can't really hear them, as if they're almost pretending to play. So I don't know whether this has been a full overdub of the final performance and they performed it live on the night, but then they went back to it and overdubbed another version of the song over the top. Something that I do notice in mimed performances is when you've got an orchestra, and sometimes an orchestra is asked to mime. But classically trained musicians don't like miming. It goes against everything they stand for, but also everything they've studied for throughout their whole lives. And not that I'm saying that they are miming, but this kind of look that we have, let's see this.
Within the sounds of silence.
This kind of look that we get at the bottom left of the screen. I don't know whether you can see that. And one of them smiles. And I don't know, to me, that I've seen that look, I wouldn't say a million times, but many, many times from classically trained musicians who spent their whole life training, and now they're miming. They're not actually playing what is on the sheet in front of them, and that's a classic kind of look. But yeah, I'm just reading into this as a musician and having seen lots of videos.
In restless dreams I walk alone.
And there we get that. I mean, I might watch that in slow motion so you can see, but if I just go back and grab my acoustic guitar, it's not plugged in. Of course, I wasn't planning on playing anything, but you'll see with the right hand here, when we have this, you can maybe see what, I don't know whether the quality of the video is good enough, but you might be able to see that the string moves, and you'll see with my right hand that I'm actually hitting the strings, whereas when you're not hitting the strings, obviously you have to leave a bit of distance, and it starts to look like, rather than strumming like that, where your focus is on the strings, it starts to look like you're kind of floating in midair, as this performance does, and it's almost like an over-strumming technique. Because you're now miming and you know you're not playing, you start to strum in an alien way that you normally wouldn't have that kind of distance that you cover. Another look at this. And you can see actually how, when he goes down, he's making sure that he's hitting the body of the guitar so that he's not kind of accidentally hitting those strings. He's actually coming down and resting on the bottom of the guitar.
Split the night and touch the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never shared. No one dared disturb the sounds of silence. The fool said, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows.
Okay, so now we've got the orchestra involved, and I mean, you can hear very slightly some strings coming in somewhere, but you'd think that it would be a lot more dramatic. I'm just going to quickly revisit the end of this video.
Sounds of silence.
Okay, right, so I mean, that clarifies the fact that we're kind of miming guitars here, because on the left hand side we've got, oh hang on, we've got one guy ending on a G and another guy ending on a D. Right, so let's grab the guitar again. So the last part of the song, the vocal melody is going to be of silence. So we should be on an E minor, so they've both gone to the wrong chord. Here we've got to the sound of silence. That's what he's playing on the left hand side, and on the right hand side we've got to the sound of silence. So hopefully you can hear how we've got that clash going on. So yeah, I mean, it's good because it proves my point that they weren't hitting the strings in the earlier part of the performance, because I know that some people might say, oh, how do you know they're not hitting their strings? They were hitting the strings and all things like that. But the fact that they're not even worrying about playing the right chords shows that they're not worried about their guitars being heard. Another thing that I want to mention is that with this song, I mean, the original, Simon and Garfunkel, their vocals were so accurate and their voices blended so well. So I know that if you're wanting to do a cover of this, the temptation to use auto-tune or pitch correction is huge, because you want it to sound as accurate as possible. But it would be really interesting, and I might do this as a follow-up video, to take the original release by Simon and Garfunkel and see how accurate their vocals actually were, because I guarantee you that they were accurate, but not on these lines all the time. So maybe I'll do that in the future. And I have looked at, on the channel, other versions of this. We had that Disturbed cover with the live performance that was, you know, really heavily auto-tuned because David Draymond was ill at that time. But then the official release of that cover by Disturbed was auto-tuned as well, or at least heavily pitch corrected. But, you know, David has a fantastic voice, and I saw a performance with him and Miles Kennedy, and they did this song fully live, no auto-tune, no pitch correction, and it was fantastic. They absolutely nailed it. So it's not the fact that it's just being auto-tuned and pitch corrected because the singers can't do it. It's just that they're trying to make it perfect with every single rendition. But even the original, I guarantee, was not perfect. And this is where I think, you know, producers are kind of missing the point. So an interesting one for tonight. I mean, the question that accompanied this request was whether auto-tune and pitch correction, or auto-tune or pitch correction, was being used, and it's right on the borderline for me between those two. It's definitely been edited, so we can say yes, it's been used. For me, it's really close to auto-tune, which is just something that you tell the processor which scale and which key you're in, and then it will just snap the notes wherever the melody goes. So it's really close to that for me, but it's more interesting because we've got other elements within this where I think if they're not playing their guitars, were they even supplying a live vocal? Were the mics even live? Maybe it was all mimed, and maybe it's just a backing track, in which case you've got this whole setup. Or maybe they played it live, but then they re-recorded it for the release of the video, and that's why things kind of don't match up very much. But then I asked myself, why would you pretend to play the guitar if you weren't playing it live? So yeah, this is definitely one of those that would need, I don't know, more investigation from a playing perspective to see what is actually live and what isn't. But just to reference the question that I got with this request, yes, it is pitch corrected and or auto-tuned. I'd say, yeah, it's really close to auto-tune, but you can hear that even in the original performance, but certainly when we isolate the vocals. But thank you guys for requesting this particular performance for me to do an investigation into. Keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below if you want me to look at any other performances. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!